First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Yahweh is the name of who this world ignorantly calls God, and Yahweh Shai is the name of who this world ignorantly calls Jesus, both in the Paleo Hebrew. I also want to give double honors to the outer bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me the truth. Today I wanted to go into the topic of this path that the elect are going to be on, and that path in the scriptures is referred to as the straight gate, right? And straight, that word, when you break it down, let's actually get the definition. Strait, a narrow passage of water connecting two seas or two other large areas of water. But the point is, it's a narrow passage, right? It's used in reference to a situation characterized by a specified degree of trouble or difficulty. And that's the exact definition of what this path is going to be like, right? It's going to be troublesome and difficult, okay? Trouble, crisis, a tight corner, right? A predicament, a sorry condition, right? Of limited spatial capacity, narrow or cramped. Because there's only one way to the kingdom of heaven, right? There's only one way to receive salvation, and that's through the straight gate, okay? And that straight gate encompasses a couple things, right? Primarily, you have to serve the Heavenly Father Yahweh via His Son Yahweh Shai, right? Keep the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of your ability. And if the Spirit's on you, you feed the sheep, right? That's the basics. But on the path of doing those things, trials and tribulations are going to come up where you're going to be tried, and where your spirit and your integrity is going to be tried to see if you truly have wisdom and if you can actually obtain it, if you're fit for salvation, right? That's why it's referred to as a straight gate, which goes into being in a position of difficulty, right? It's not going to be easy, okay? That's why it says here in Matthew chapter 22 and verse 14, for many are called, but few are chosen, right? There's been plenty of brothers that have been in this truth. They've labored for years, right? Done the work. And somehow, some way, Satan came upon them and sifted them, right? They fell out. They lost faith. And that's a scary thing, right? That's a super scary thing to think about and to even imagine that there's someone that had the 100% truth, right? He was serving the Heavenly Father and His Son. And out of nowhere, or throughout time, he lost that faith, right? He lost everything that he was ultimately working for, right? Because it talks about how those that put their hand to the plow and look back are not fit for the kingdom. So once you start this work, hey, there's only one way, right? You have to finish it. And if you don't, hey, you're not fit, right? You're one of those that have been called but weren't chosen. Because how it says, hey, this truth, this path is referred to as the straight gate, right? Straight meaning difficult, gate meaning path, right? It's a difficult path, okay? But back to the main point, for many are called, but few are chosen. So knowing this, that many are called, but few are chosen, we want to try to ultimately make it, right? The most we can. And ultimately make sure we're in the right spirit, in the right mindset, and constantly trying to seek Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and not get lackadaisical and get comfortable, right? Because once you start doing those things, you start having that spirit of proudness, right? You start getting proudful and thinking, oh, I know enough, I don't have to learn anymore. When in actuality, even the elder apostles are still learning every single day, right? Because the scriptures are referred to as living waters, right? Constantly refreshing, new things popping up that we can learn from, right? Life experiences, okay? And to make it to the kingdom of heaven, you have to endure throughout all these things that are going to come upon us, right? The difficulties, the trials, the things that you don't see coming that, hey, they blindside you, right? You have to go through all of that. And it goes back to this: for many are called, but few are chosen. Right? The chosen they're gonna endure that path, right? The difficulty that they're gonna have to go through. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're in the right spirit, and ultimately, securing our salvation. Right? That's why the scriptures go into. Let me get that. Um, trembling. Let's see where it is. Let's see where it's at. Um, nope. Following. That's what it was. Let's get that. Second Peter chapter 1 and verse 10. Wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if you do these things, ye shall never fail. Right? And that's what we're constantly doing, is trying to make sure that we're part of those chosen. Right? Part of the elect. And ultimately that's a matter of predestination either way. But we don't know that right now through the Spirit. Right? Nobody knows if they're part of the elect or not. Right? The only time we're gonna truly know is when we're beamed up into those chariots, right? That's the moment where we're gonna finally say, "Hey, the water," right? That's when we're gonna actually rest, and we can just relax when we get beamed up into the chariots. But till then, we have to give diligence, right? And that word goes into being persistent, right? Careful and persistent work of effort. And that goes into being disciplined, right? These are all traits that the elect are going to have, right? They're going to have diligence. They're going to have discipline. They're going to have their own way to serve the Lord, right? And hey, we're ultimately all seeking the same thing, to make it through that path, right? The straight gate. And there's only one way, and it's through the straight gate, right? You can't buy yourself into the kingdom of heaven. How that guy Kanye was saying, right? He said he was trying to buy himself into the kingdom of heaven in one of his songs. Right? That's not possible. That's going through the broad, right? Hey, there's only one way, the straight gate, one path. And I'm gonna go into Second Esdras. Hey, he breaks that down beautifully. Okay, but let's get this in Matthew. In Matthew chapter 7 and verse 13, the narrow and wide gates. It says, "Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." Right? Many are called, but few are chosen. Few there be that find it. And that goes into the 1/3 of the nation of Israel, the elect that are going to be saved in these last days. Right? Those are going to be the ones that are able to get through that gate, right? Through that narrow passage, right? Through everything that comes at their way, they're going to be able to overcome and keep on pushing, right? Hey, and that's what we're ultimately striving for, is to be part of that number and to be in the spirit that the elect would be in. That's why the scriptures say that we should put on as the elect, right? Act like you're part of the elect, right? Do the things that an elect member would do, right? And that's ultimately how we're going to make it, right? But once again, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat, right? The way of destruction, the way of this world, that's ultimately the broad way, right? All the thing that this world offers, which goes into just wickedness, right? It's very easy to live a life of wickedness and a life of just iniquity, right? And because ultimately that's what the flesh wants, is to be pleasured all the time and to not care, right? Not have responsibility, just constantly indulge in pleasure in the flesh ultimately, okay? But that straight gate, hey, you're ultimately indulging in the spirit, right? You're not letting that flesh overcome you, right? And that's why it's difficult, because every single day it's a battle between your spirit and your flesh. That's why it says that the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. Right? Your spirit every single day is willing to make the sacrifices to get to that next level. But the flesh comes in is like, nah, I'm tired. Nah, we could do that later. Right? And you have to rebuke that hoe. You have to rebuke that shit. Because, hey, we don't battle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness, right? Spiritual powers in high places, spiritual principalities. However it goes, roughly paraphrasing, right? We don't wrestle with carnal, right? It's all spiritual, It's all just plants and seeds and ideas that Satan's planting inside of us, right? To trying to sift us and trying to move us away from the truth. So that's why the kingdom of heaven, that path, is referred to as the straight gate, right? It's difficult. And no one said it was going to be easy. And you're going to have to suffer two things in this path. You're going to have to suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And the pain of discipline is going to be that straight gate, right? Ultimately knowing that everything that you're doing, right, all that hell that you're catching is for something greater, right? For a bigger reward and a bigger purpose. But the pain of regret is going to be the people that go out throughout the broad way that leadeth to destruction, right? Because when all these things come to pass, they're going to say, God damn, I should have listened to those men that were telling me to repent. I should have listened to that guy on the corner speaking by himself, right? I thought he was crazy. I should have listened to him. They're going to be saying all these things, and that's where the pain of regrets comes in, right? You have two choices every single day. Let's get this in 2nd Ezra chapter 7. And this is Ezra breaking down the path, right? Breaking down the road to salvation. And I'll start at 1. It says, And when I had made an end of speaking these words, there was sent unto me the angel which had been sent unto me the nights afore. And he said unto me, Up, Esdras, and hear the words that I am come to tell thee. And I said, Speak on, my God. Then said he unto me, The sea is set in a wide place, that it might be deep and great. But put the case the entrance were narrow and like a river. Who then could go into the sea to look upon it and to rule it? If he went not through the narrow, how could he come into the broad? Right? There's also another thing. A city is builded and set upon a broad field, and is full of all good things. The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water. Right? So you have a city, right? A great city that has all these good things. It's just talking about the kingdom of heaven. But it says the entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall. Right? Talking about the straight gate. Right? It's going to be a path that is dangerous. Right? Narrow. Difficult. Okay? It says like as if there were a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water. And only one path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. Right? Going into the path. How ultimately it's a lonely road. Right? Sure, you have the brothers, and you have the what's it called? Yeah, the brothers. Right? You have people to talk to pretty much sharpen you. But ultimately, it all comes down to your own salvation. Because we're ultimately trying to fight for ourselves, right? We help out the brothers and do this and that to make sure we're all on point. But hey, everyone's trying to seek out their own salvation with fear and trembling, right? Trying to make sure that they make it, right? And it's not a thing about greediness. It's a thing about, hey, I want to make sure I make it, right? I don't know what's gonna happen to him, or him. I want to make sure I make it, okay? That's why it says, and only one path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. Right? Talking about that, it's referring the path to having fire on one side and water on another. Right? Because easily you can fall off that path to destruction. Right? Through the broad gate, through the broad gates, and get destroyed. Right? You can walk one side, you can fall off, go through the fire, and just get destroyed. Right? You lost it. You can keep on going, you fall to the right, you fall into the water, you drown. Right? So it's like a little tightrope where you have to find perfectly what works. Right? What works. Because one thing I can say is that what I do in the truth, right, my routines that I do to show Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai that I'm diligently serving him, is not going to be the same as another brother. Right? He might read less than me. Right? He might make less videos than me. Right? But ultimately, he's doing his capacity, his lot, right? As long as you're striving every single day to try to be better and to make sure that you're serving him in truthfulness, right? With a sincere, meek, and lowly spirit, hey, that's okay, right? Do whatever you can do. Everyone has a different portion, right? Some men are going to gather 100-fold. Some men are only going to gather 50, 10, 5, 2, 1. Okay? So according to your lots is how it says, to whom much is given, much is required. Right? That breaks it down beautifully. But it says, if this city now were given unto a man for an inheritance, if he never shall pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive this inheritance? Right? For us to receive the inheritance, the blessings, the salvation ultimately, right? The kingdom of heaven, we have to go through the bad too, like Job talked about, right? I forgot how it went, but he was pretty much saying how the Lord gives good, how shall we now receive bad also? Right, saying that if the Lord gives good, he's also going to give us bad because he's a just balance, right? Hey, look at the story of Job, right? He was a righteous man and he got tormented, right? Satan came upon him and tried him. He caught hell for who knows how long, right? But it was ultimately some deep shit. But after he went through that hell, he came out with everything tenfold, right? All the trials and tribulations he went through, it paid off. And that's the same thing the elect are doing today, right? We're going to go through these trials and tribulations. We're going to catch hell. But ultimately, it's going to pay off like Job, and we're going to receive, however fold he's going to give us. Tenfold, 100, whatever it is, right? But as it says, if this city now were given unto a man for an inheritance, if he shall never pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive this inheritance? And that's beautiful. It says, and I said, it is so, Lord. Then said he unto me, even so also is Israel's portion. Right? This is what the nation of Israel are going to have to go through. And ultimately the elect are going to pass that test. Okay? But part of that straight gate is, how I said, following the law, statutes, and commandments. And I'm going to just go through these two scriptures real quick, which go into being like our forefathers, right? Because that's also going to bring a lot of hell towards us, right? Disconnecting from this world. But let's just get that real quick. This is Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16. It says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, stand ye in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. And that's ultimately talking about the rebellious, stiff-necked house of Israel, right? 2/3, right? But the 1/3, how it was told, we're supposed to ask for the old paths, right? What were our forefathers doing? And walk in the paths of our forefathers, because it was holy, right? That's why it says here in Baruch chapter 2 and verse 33, it says, and return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds, for they shall remember the way of their fathers which sinned before the Lord. Okay? And that's part of the straight gate, is coming back to the law, statutes, and commandments, coming back to the way of our fathers, right? And that's why it says in the scriptures that he came to send, he didn't come to send peace, but rather division, right? To set a man against his neighbor, his family, his son, wife, right? And part of that comes through this, right? Returning to the way of our forefathers, right? Following the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Putting on the garment, the fringes, okay? Wearing the beard, not getting lined up, right? These are all things that our forefathers used to do, and that's actually in the law. And when you start doing these things, that straight gate is going to come upon you, right? You're going through the straight gate. People are going to start looking at you differently, treating you differently, and you're going to catch hell, right? And it's all part of the journey. I just wanted to add that in to just add an example of how how a lot of brothers, right? Ultimately all of us are catching hell, or we've gone through things for just simply following the old paths, okay? But yeah, once again, just was going over a couple scriptures going into the straight gate and how we have to make sure we're part of the chosen, right? Make sure that we're not one of those that have only been called, but that we've also been chosen and called. Okay, we want both of these. But hopefully this was edifying and you guys got something out of this. With that, I want to give our praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakakwadash, and double honor to the outer bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you elect. Shalom.